The number 8 team for me is the Dallas Mavericks. And it might look a little bit weird to have the Mavericks ahead of the Memphis Grizzlies. But this team went to the conference finals last year with Luka Doncic. They now have Kyrie Irving, who those two together already look great on offense. They look phenomenal to me. Like the way that has mixed together has just been perfect. It's the dream of everything that I hoped. Kane, I would imagine to you, that is why they can win the NBA title, right?
Yeah, I was going through these teams in the West, and sometimes because of the stuff that we've said, that some of the numbers are really hard to track and guys have missed games, and maybe in some instances guys have moved teams. But if you talk about having two guys, but without completely sidetracking us here, one really quick question, because when you talk about having two guys, you just spoke about the Grizzlies. We had the Pelicans below the Grizzlies. So let's just say both those teams are fully healthy. Who do you think can go on a deeper run in the postseason?
I don't know that it's fair to expect full health from the Pelicans at this point. So I just want to say that. Like, I obviously I have the Grizzlies ahead. I would say the Grizzlies. Yeah. Full health, I would take the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans are a harder matchup problem night in, night out. Plus, they're deeper. I think that they have more high-end talent. We just haven't seen enough of it yet for me to trust it. In theory, I would take the Pelicans. In practice, I think that the Grizzlies are probably more likely.
Yeah, agree. And so the reason I brought that up just then is because, like, when you're looking at Kyrie and Luka, so can they win? Of course, yeah, because those two guys are terrifying. The Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, the Phoenix Suns with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. So, like, that, and Denver with Jokic and Jamal Murray as well. So that's why if you have at least two guys, the question becomes, like, what does depth matter? And we had Tim McMahon on one of our shows last week, and he said we obviously, from an Australian perspective, we got into the Josh Green stuff. He's made a real leap this year. He's been fantastic. The Dorian Finney-Smith trade obviously opens up room for Josh Green to come into the lineup, start, play major minutes. He'll be getting those defensive assignments because Dallas is not a good defensive team. But the way Tim put it, I think, was perfect. He said, Josh Green is the third best player on the Mavericks right now. And that's great. That shows how Josh Green has risen. It shows that he's going to make a heap of money, and he now gets to do stuff that he just simply couldn't do in the past. But is it the best thing for the Dallas Mavericks? Maybe not if you're entering the postseason. So then it comes to the question of, you can have superstar talent. They've got a superstar duo, but what does depth mean in the postseason? I don't think it means that much past your sixth or seventh player. But when you get to your third player and you're like, there's a bit of a drop-off here, I think that's where the concern obviously starts.
Where depth matters in the playoffs to me is in terms of matchups, right? Being able to find different mismatches, being able to find different marginal advantages while minimizing the marginal advantages that opposing teams can create for you. This is why, to me, the most important Dallas Maverick right now is Maxi Kleber. Right. All due respect to, I mean, look, Luka Doncic is obviously the most important Dallas Maverick. Yeah. Kyrie is incredibly important, but the swing guy for them, the X factor for them, so to speak, is Maxi Kleber, because Maxi Kleber is an absolutely terrific defender who also can knock down corner threes at a really high level. He's an incredibly important piece for them because he's a two-way player on a roster that doesn't really have them anymore. Like Luka Doncic, when he's locked in, he's actually pretty okay defensively. Like, I think he'll be fine in the playoffs. Kyrie, there are moments where he's okay defensively, but he's just small and can be taken advantage of in terms of mismatches that way. Christian Wood can't defend. We just need to be real about that. Like, just not a good defensive player. It's hard when your top three guys are not plus defenders in some way. So then you have to go down the roster. Like, Reggie Bullock has had a pretty good year offensively. He's been okay defensively. Maxi Kleber has missed a ton of time. He played their first 22 games. Josh Green has been a good defender this year. He's energetic. He's athletic. He gets up and down in transition. I think he's a great transition partner for Kyrie when Kyrie tries to push the pace. I don't know. How do you feel about Josh Green having to guard like the opposing team's best player in the playoffs night in, night out? I think he does a better job on like guards and like smaller wings than he does on like bigger guys like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. You can go up and down the list in terms of some of the guys they could run into in the West. I'm a little bit worried about how Josh Green looks in those settings for as good as Josh Green has been this year. And he's been great over his last 12 games. He's been like utterly critical to what they've done. He's averaging like 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 turnovers, shooting 52% from the field, 37% from 3. Like, enormous player. The leap that he's taken has been huge and probably allowed them to feel okay about moving Dorian Finney-Smith. But when you lose Dorian Finney-Smith, you lose the guy that can guard up the lineup. And that's what worries me.
Yeah, I totally get the trade. I understand why they did it. I think it does make them more dangerous because even still, they would have still had problems with depth. They still would have had the questions about the big man. So now you at least have another superstar in the lineup. And we've seen them have some close games with those two down the stretch, and they're still going to figure some stuff out. But I always just have concerns when you look at, again, the better teams. It's like, well, you need guys that can defend 2 through 4 in the postseason. And when you're relying on guys that, for the most part, get their stuff done on the defensive end and they're minimal players on offense, I just think that it limits you. It's hard for me to look at the Dallas Mavericks and put them in the same category as some of the other teams we're about to get to, which is probably why you've got them on your tier list here. So I think they're dangerous. I think they'll be scary to play in a series because of those two guys, but it would need to be one hell of a run for those two guys for them to get to the conference finals and beyond.
Yeah, so like their best lineup in the playoffs, my bet is going to be Kyrie and Luka with Josh Green, Reggie Bullock, and Maxi Kleber. And then they use Christian Wood in big moments. He plays 25 minutes a night and just hope that he doesn't get played off the court defensively, right? There are probably ways that you can actualize Christian Wood to be able to do that. And having him with Kyrie and with Luka, who are real pick and pop partners, real pick and roll partners, it's going to be really hard to stop Christian Wood in the playoffs on offense. He just needs to not give away as many points as he's scoring, and we'll see. There are moments where he locks in and things go okay. He's a big factor for them. We'll see, but I think Maxi's a bigger factor for them.
They don't have the Kings don't have the star power, but if you just look at the profile, offense, defense, they're Kingsy. They're Kingsy.
They are a little bit Kingsy. I think they have a little bit more just in terms of defense than the Kings do. The defensive upside, maybe, but it's close. You're right. It is close.